Hello, everyone. We're back with our podcast to continue our journey of self-understanding. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe button. And now let's begin today's topic. When I uploaded this episode, you've probably already seen the title and guessed our topic today. The question is, can money buy happiness? This is a big and quite important question. However, before we find the answer to this question, we need to answer an even bigger question. What is the purpose of our lives? Today, we're bombarded with such agonizing questions, aren't we? But I believe that many of us have asked ourselves these questions at least once. Because, in truth, these are very important questions. And if we don't find the answers, we'll easily fall into a state of living by habit. That is, we'll just do what everyone around us does. And gradually, we'll forget what we truly need. Personally, when I was younger, I didn't think too much about these things. But as I got older, I started to ponder these kinds of questions more and more, especially after turning 30. From then on, I began searching for answers to these big questions, and in the end, I discovered that the answer is actually very simple. It's encapsulated in two words: happiness. It's not about wealth, success, or fame. I believe all those things are just means to an end, which is happiness. So what is happiness? And why do we sometimes hear the saying that money can't buy happiness? Or the common question, what's the point of having a lot of money? And those who say such things are usually people who have a lot of money. So why is that? And if happiness is the ultimate goal and money can't buy it, then why does everything in our lives revolve around making money? Should we stop making money? These are questions I've pondered for a long time, and in today's episode, I will share with you the journey I took to find the answers for myself. Through this, I also hope to share with you a framework, or to put it more figuratively, a map that I have drawn myself to prepare for my journeys. Hopefully, with this map, you can use it to find your own answers. Each person can draw their own map of life. In these maps, I divide it into 3 levels. The first level, I call the survival level, meaning the level of survival. Those of you who have studied marketing are probably familiar with the max-low hierarchy of needs. In that, the lowest level consists of the most basic human needs, without which we cannot survive. These include having enough food to eat, enough clothes to wear, medicine when sick, and a roof over our heads to protect us from the sun and rain. That's why I use the word shelter, not house or home. Because at the most basic level, the minimum we need is a place to protect us from the dangers of the surrounding environment. House, or home, is a different story at home when we start talking about conveniences. These are just a few examples of the most basic needs, without which we would almost certainly be unable to survive. If we were to lack them, frankly, our lives would be a torment. Imagine eating today's meal and not knowing if we'll have rice to eat tomorrow. Then there's the ragged clothes, the lack of medicine when sick. That would be a very difficult life. At this point, all our focus would be on having these basic needs met. For those whose lives are a struggle to make ends meet, and who lack even basic necessities like clothing, we can't possibly talk about freedom or happiness. The solution to all these problems at the first level is actually very simple: money. Money will solve all these problems. We can use money to buy food, clothes, medicine when we're sick, and even buy or rent a house to protect us from the sun and rain. Everything is very simple and clear. The reason I use the word simple here is because the answer is very straightforward. It means that with money, we can solve everything. No other factors are needed. Of course, for those in this situation, figuring out how to make money is a different matter entirely, and it will be very difficult for them. But what I mean here is that the solution is very simple. That's why I always encourage you to embark on the journey to financial freedom. Because the journey to financial freedom is the most effective way to avoid falling into this situation. If you remember, the initial stages of the journey to financial freedom are actually about getting out of debt. Then, gradually, you break free from financial dependence on someone else. It could be your parents or a charity. From there, you can gradually have enough money to meet your basic living needs. And those basic living needs are level 1 on this chart. Once we have enough money to cover these needs, that's when we begin to lay the basic foundation to find solutions to the problems at level 2. And this level 2 is freedom. To achieve freedom, we must break free from the constraints and anxieties in our lives. Because only when we completely eliminate these constraints can we begin to have the freedom to build the elements of the third level. That is the level of happiness. So, the anxieties. At the third level, the level of happiness. What are these anxieties? The first anxiety is about money. At the first level, we see that we can solve everything with money. And the way most people usually do it is by using their labor to earn money, and then using that money to meet their basic needs. However, if we stop there, our lives will become dependent on money. And as I have analyzed many times, this dependence will keep our lives in a constant state of anxiety. This anxiety is because if we lose our jobs, we will immediately return to the first level. Therefore, the way to completely eliminate this anxiety is to find a way to completely break free from the influence of money. Otherwise, we would forever be working for money and would no longer have the mental capacity to seek happiness at higher levels. Next, the second freedom I set for myself is freedom from material possessions. Because, as I shared with you in the series on minimalist living, material things are what hold us back the most and make our lives increasingly burdensome. And those are the two greatest freedoms that I think each of us, in whatever way, should have. In addition, in my case, my formula includes two more aspects of freedom. These two aspects are only important to me. They might not be as important to others. Therefore, I will only briefly explain why I included these two aspects in my formula. The first aspect is freedom, liberation from anxieties. In our lives, there are so many things that cause us worry, and my goal is to eliminate as many of these worries as possible. And the biggest worry is the worry about health. That is, I raise the issue. My goal is to ensure that whenever I have a health problem, I can rest assured that I will receive the best possible care without having to worry about anything else. The second concern is safety, such as encountering robbers or accidents on the street, or someone who's desperate and might stab or shoot you. These are all safety concerns. And finally, there's one more factor that's very important to me, though it might not be so important to some of you. The freedom to go anywhere, to live in any country I want. That's my definition of freedom. Free from money, free from stuff, free from worries, and free from location. As I said earlier, everyone's definition of freedom is different. And even if it were the same, the answers to all the questions would still differ depending on each person's life. Therefore, you need to sit down and determine what your freedom will look like. Now, looking at the other side of this level, you'll see that I've written it as money plus mindset. That's because, unlike level 1 where most problems can be solved with money, at level 2, besides accumulating a certain amount of money, we also need to build another aspect, our mindset. As I've shared with you in previous articles, to achieve financial freedom and a minimalist lifestyle, one crucial element is building a mindset of contentment. We cannot complete these journeys without cultivating this mindset. These two factors, money and mindset, will help us gradually achieve the second level of freedom. Only when we achieve this freedom can we confidently move on to building aspects at a higher level. That is the level of happiness. This is the highest level, and also the most difficult to reach. It's difficult because it's a level that cannot be bought with money. The happiness found at this level is something I believe everyone in life aspires to. That is love. This could be romantic love, marital love, or it could be family love, friendship, or even community love. Next, there is joy, the pleasures in life, the excitement of waking up each day to do things we love. Then, at an even higher level, there's fulfillment, the feeling of contentment, a feeling that your life is complete and meaningful. And at the very top level, there's life purpose. That's when we discover higher goals that go beyond our own personal pleasure. It's when we begin to find joy in creating value for those around us and seeing others succeed and be happy. That's when we start thinking about the legacy we'll leave behind after we're gone from this life. And these things gradually lead us to a higher level. That's when we begin to find peace and tranquility in life. This might sound a bit far-fetched, even cliché to some, but I believe these are things everyone wants. It's just like a mirage in the desert. You see it somewhere in front of you. You know you want it, but sometimes life's challenges prevent you from even thinking about such far-fetched things. And as I said earlier, this is the most difficult level to reach because everything at this level can't be bought with money. Most things must be achieved through mindset and personal effort. And although these aspects are flawed, these things can't be bought with money. But these mindsets can only be achieved after we've freed ourselves from the influence of money and material possessions. That means after we've completed step number 2. As promised at the beginning, I'll share with you the method I chose to solve my map problem. Because if I only explain it theoretically, it might be difficult for you to visualize. And giving someone else's example isn't very good either. Therefore, the simplest way is for me to share my own example with you. So, at the first level, like everyone else, I solved it by working. And because it wasn't anything special, there's not much to share at this point. Moving on to the second level, that's when I realized that I was working so hard that the work gradually tied me down. I didn't dare take time off when I was sick, and I didn't dare stop when I was tired. That's when I realized I needed a change. I needed to dare to stop. That's when I realized I needed to change somehow, to break free from the influence of money. When I thought about that, I saw I had 2 choices. The first was to make a lot of money, so much so that I wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. But if I chose this path, I don't know when I would reach the billionaire milestone, and maybe I would never reach it. And the end result might be that my whole life would be spent doing only one thing, making money, and I don't want that. I want to accomplish more in my life, so I chose the second option, finding my enough. From there, I embarked on my journey to financial freedom. I've shared a very detailed account of this in my series of articles on financial freedom in the future. Next, how can I become less dependent on material things? I've already shared quite a bit about this in my recent series of articles on the dark life philosophy. I explained why this dark life philosophy helped free me from the aspects of ownership and material possessions. Next, regarding the freedom to travel anywhere in the world and the liberation from anxieties about health, safety, and the living environment, the path I chose was to acquire another citizenship, specifically Australian citizenship. The reason is that once I become an Australian citizen and have an Australian passport, it allows me to travel to almost all countries in the world. And if, unfortunately, I have any health problems, I can simply return to Australia and be assured that I will receive health care from one of the best medical systems in the world. And everything was completely free. In addition, Australia also gave me some other requirements, such as safety and living environment. And that's why I was determined to complete the process of obtaining Australian citizenship. Now that we have this map in hand, let's try to find the answer to our initial question. The question is, can money buy happiness? Clearly, the answer is no, money cannot buy happiness. However, while money isn't a sufficient condition for happiness, it is a necessary one. Without it, it's very difficult to achieve happiness. And even if happiness is achieved, it's very fragile and can crumble at any time. Can 2 people in love endure poverty? The simple reality is that no matter how much they love each other, if they're constantly struggling with food, clothing, and shelter, their happiness is very easily shattered. And it's not just about romantic relationships. We can take another example, artists. They find joy in their lives. For those who are extremely passionate, it's even possible to say they've found their purpose in life, painting. But without financial stability and freedom, that passion will eventually give way to the worries of making ends meet. Conversely, let's imagine that if that person already has enough freedom at level 2, they could choose to paint for the rest of their life without any problem. That's why I say happiness built on a solid foundation is much more secure. Some people don't see the whole picture, So they just focus on going straight to level 3 while the levels below aren't even finished. For example, going straight to peace while still lacking something is, in most cases, almost impossible. Looking back, I only see one group that can do this: the monks. They go straight to the highest goal, which is to find peace and a purpose in life. As for basic needs, they live on donations from Buddhist followers. But as I've said before, even in these cases, the vast majority of monks still have some concerns about the economic situation and other aspects of their temples. That's the case for the monks, but for the vast majority of ordinary people like us, it's almost impossible to do it that way. To achieve lasting happiness and peace, we must start from the bottom up. We must build that happiness on a solid foundation. Only then will it be stable and long-lasting. Happiness is a luxury that even wealthy people may not be able to attain, so it becomes even more difficult if we are still struggling with the constraints of money and material possessions. This doesn't mean we have to wait until we have all these things before we can seek and build happiness, but the happiness we build will be much more secure if it's built on a solid foundation at level 2. Similarly, to reach level 2, we must first have level 1. I have to use the word must here, not should or shouldn't, because without floor 1, there's no way we can get to floor 2. Female, the proof is that we cannot possibly talk about this freedom or that freedom to people who are still struggling to make ends meet. We also cannot talk about minimalist living with people who are living in dilapidated shacks and lack even basic necessities like dishes and chopsticks. Similarly, we can't talk about freedom of movement with people who are sick and don't have money for medicine if we say these things to them. They'll curse us out. In these situations, they're in a survival phase. Their goal is to survive for 3 days, eating lunch, and then they have to figure out how to earn enough money for dinner. If they get sick, finding even a little money to buy medicine is already a struggle. They won't have the mental capacity to think about lofty things like freedom or passions. Those are the main points I wanted to share with you today. Through finding the answer to that important question, I also shared with you the map I have used to guide my life for many years. And even now, I'm still using this map to continue on my journeys. I'm sharing my map with you not so that you'll follow the exact same path as me, but so that it can give you a general framework from which to determine your own path. You need to determine what you need during this period of freedom. How do you define freedom? What components does it include? And how can you achieve it? How is it defined? What components does it include? And how can those components be achieved? Once you have gained your freedom, what will happiness be like for you? And what path will lead you to achieve that happiness? Having created such a map for myself, I believe it will be very helpful to you all in your lives, just as it has been very helpful to me on my journeys over the years. I also made a major turning point in my life late last year. It was a very big and difficult decision for me. And one of the motivations that helped me make such big decisions in my life was looking at this map. I'll end this episode here. I hope these shared insights will be as helpful to you as they were to me. If you find this content valuable, please share it with your friends and family. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can click the subscribe button. Goodbye and see you in the next episodes.